And this all connects us back to Isaiah chapter 7, when God says he will bring on Judah days unlike any since Ephraim departed from Judah. He's declaring here, you're about to relive the same pain your fathers did because you're walking down the same path. See, Ahaz's alliance with Assyria wasn't new. It was just another version of Jeroboam's golden calf. Different idol, same heart, fear instead of faith. Verses 18 and 19 tell us this. And it will be in that day that Yahweh will whistle for the fly that is in the remotest parts of the rivers of Egypt, and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria. And they will all come and rest upon the steep ravines, on the crevices of the cliffs, on all the thorn bushes, and on the watering places. So King Ahaz, who's over Judah, was caught between two enemies and one bad ally. To his north, the king was Aram of Syria, and Israel of, you had Ephraim. They were joining forces to pressure Judah into rebelling against Assyria. Ahaz panics and decides at that point to ask Assyria for help, sending gold and silver from the temple as payment. We learn this in 2 Kings chapter 16. I think it's interesting because in my mind, he's trying to buy his salvation. Another lesson that you could explore here, but salvation is not for sale. Assyria agrees, but once they're finished crushing Aram and Israel, they kept coming south towards Judah. Right? So in Isaiah chapter 7, God is warning Ahaz, once you've let the enemy in, division, like that division into your home, it is nearly impossible to drive that out. And think about our lives today. Right? So again, this is Torah. This is the Tanakh that we're learning from. We're looking back to what Moses gave to the people of Israel as part of the commandments, the instructions on how to live. We're learning at what are the blessings and curses. We're seeing the results when God's people, Israel, have failed to be obedient to God. And what comes with that, because God promised that would happen, right? And so when you look at this, you begin to see that God is giving a warning to God's people that still applies to us today, right? So did Isaiah write this letter to you and I today in 2025? No, I don't think that this particular part applies. However, the lessons to be learned still do, right? So to me, we have to be very careful what divisions we allow into our home. And we've been saying this the entire Isaiah series. What authority do you allow in your life? Is it a political authority? Is it a medical authority? Is it a spiritual authority? Right? There are so many different things that cause us to divide. And this is what God is trying to get through to our heads and to our hearts, is that we can only have one master. His name is Messiah Yeshua, Jesus the Christ. We can only have one. And once you've let these other divisions in, it becomes chaos. This is one of the reasons for many years we homeschooled, right? We've had kids go to regular school. And when you have competing authorities where the teacher and maybe myself we're in agreement on a specific social issue, it brought division into my home. So later, as we had other children, we tried to keep them in. We kept them homeschooled for many years, teaching them. And you know what? For the longest part, that brought a great deal of peace regarding some of the more important issues. It's why I'm very careful about which doctors I bring my children to. It's what teachers, what political people that I expose them to. Because once this thought process comes into your home, this division, it's nearly impossible to drive them out. That's why the church has suffered and we've become weak. We've become weak in 2025 because we've allowed all this syncretism and we've allowed this immorality, sexual idolatry, all these behaviors to come in and influence the church. And now we can't drive it back out. And so here's what we learn here. The flies and the bees that Isaiah is talking about are pictures of armies swarming over the land. Isn't that the picture that we get today? I feel like, man, the enemy seems to be never ending. It's swarming over my home and my community and our churches. Assyria was famous for overwhelming nations like a flood of living soldiers. Egypt, mentioned here as the fly, would also buzz at Judah's borders during this period. Another world power ready to take advantage of Judah's weakness. You know, I think the reason that these are used and described as these type of animals is it's something that Isaiah's audience would recognize. Flies breed filth. They represent annoying, disease-spreading, uncontrollable irritation. And bees, well, they're relentless. Small but organized, able to swarm and sting repeatedly. So Isaiah is saying God will whistle, and these nations will come like insects that you can't escape. But here's the interesting thing to me, right? These bees, these flies that are going to come in, they're going to fill every valley, every crevice, every thorn bush. And here's what's really interesting. God's going to say to them, you think that you obey me, but watch. My people don't obey me, but the world will. I will whistle and they will come. This is what obedience looks like. I think that's really a powerful message for us to consider. Like, especially as we look at other people of different faiths and different beliefs, sometimes they're more obedient to God than we are. What I love is that this shows that God is in complete control over nature and the nations. Assyria and Egypt, they're not acting on their own. They are instruments in God's hands. He's reminding Judah that you put your faith in these other nations, but they serve me, not you. Isaiah's audience would hear the echo of the Torah in this. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, we learn things like Yahweh will bring a nation against you from far away. They will besiege you in all your towns. So the prophecy that God is saying here is that the very armies that I've warned you about centuries ago are now on their way. They're coming because you repeated the same mistake. You know, today, many of us believe that we are living in the last days. Now, I would qualify that by saying the last days begin when Christ ascended to the right hand of the Father, right? But I would say that we feel like we're living in the last moments, the last hours, and we've seen, even in most recently, tribulation stories just take up the internet. Rapture stories are all over the place. And none of that seems to be drawing us closer to God. And that's the message here, is that we need to understand that these things are going to happen. That's what Revelations 1 says. It says that the things that are going to happen so fast that if you're not prepared, you won't be ready for it. It's too late to respond. Today is to look at all these things that are going on in the world around us and draw closer to God. But we don't do that. We do just what Israel does. We get ourselves caught up in the things that divide us rather than the one who unites us. Right? Sometimes I think we need to remember that God allows the very things that we trust in to swarm us. Not to destroy us, but to show us that He alone rules the swarm. When life feels overrun, too many worries or too many pressures, it's worth taking the few minutes out of your day and asking, have I been trusting in something other than Him to keep me safe? Because the God who commands the bees also is the God that can calm those bees when His people return in faith.